Hello, everyone. I'm Svend Rønning, Artistic Director of the Second City Chamber Series. It's been so great to see so many of you live and in the flesh at our recent Young Chamber Players outdoor concerts. And I'm so looking forward to finally seeing many of you and to perform for you with pianist Lisa Bergman on our upcoming concert at Lakewold Gardens on Thursday, July 22nd. This is going to be a very sweet post-COVID reunion, and I hope many of you can make it for our concert entitled How Sweet It Is, made up mostly of suites for violin and piano by composers from every corner of the earth. One exception, because it is a sonata rather than a suite, was composed, in fact, during our global pandemic. And this work is receiving its public premiere on Second City Chamber Series on July 22nd. The composer, Dawn Sonntag, is new to the Puget Sound, having most recently relocated from Hiram College, but with a diverse career that has spanned large parts of North America and Europe. I thought it would be really great to continue our COVID necessitated snapshot conversations, now not because we have to, but because we want to and because it's fun and interesting. So I've invited Dawn Sonntag here to speak with us today. So Dawn, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
It's great to have you. Dawn, you and I had the pleasure of playing your new violin sonata composed early in 2021, and we played it through and recorded it in May, and I'm so pleased that we're able to present it in a live and public forum after so many months in lockdown. How sweet it is.
Yes.
Indeed. Maybe you can tell us about what inspired you to compose this particular piece.
Well, I had been wanting to compose a violin sonata for a long time. I love strings. I love the violin. And a friend of mine had encouraged me to apply for the Washington State Music Teacher Association's composition commission, which is an annual competition that takes place actually in every state in the country with the Music Teachers National Association. And I had won this competition in Ohio in 2010, but I had never even thought about entering in Washington. I'm relatively new here. I'd only been here a year last summer. And so I thought, well, this would be a great opportunity to write some new chamber music. And as part of the application, I had to write a proposal actually detailing what I would write for the commission. And this was last summer. So as I'm sure you recall, we were all dealing with new challenges connected with a pandemic. And there was a lot of, I would say, dissonance and controversy and fear and the themes of conflict and isolation and all of those things were all just there. And it was really impossible to escape them. They were on everybody's minds. And so I decided to actually shape I decided to compose a 3-movement sonata and to shape it, to let these issues that we were facing influence the form. And I wanted to incorporate some different cultural musical elements because our country is multicultural. And I, in fact, do have a family connection with Native Americans. And so I've always been very aware of the tensions surrounding the exploitation of Native Americans in American history. And so I decided to use, for the 3rd movement, a Native American melody that was connected with a peace prayer about teaching our children to love and respect each other and to share the resources on the earth. And I actually found the text after I had found the melody. But in any case, the first movement of the sonata ended up being a a sort of expression of the heaviness and the dissonance and the unrest that we were all experiencing. The second movement is a lament that is based around the gospel hymn, Precious Lord, Take My Hand, the text of which is composed by, was written by Thomas A. Dorsey, who was a Black gospel musician. This is not Tommy Dorsey, the white jazz trombonist, but Thomas A. Dorsey, who lived from 1899 to 1993. And he wrote the text in response to his wife's death in childbirth. So it's a heavy, just a very poignant text, and the melody is beautiful. It's an old American melody that is anonymous. So it became Martin Luther King's favorite hymn, actually, and was supposed to be played at a mass he was going to attend on the day of his assassination. And I had already connected with this particular hymn long ago, long before I knew any of this history. I just really loved this hymn. And so it just felt really right to use it in the second movement. And then the third movement moves into more of feeling of hope and forward motion into reconciliation, and that's where I used the Native American chant song. And I really thought hard about that, because I think in both cases, both in gospel, spiritual music, and in Native American chant, the purpose of the music is really sacred. And I wanted to stress how my connection with these traditions and how much I respect them, and that they were being used for a really special cause in the sonata. So I sort of allowed each piece to shape itself, and the first movement ended up turning into a rondo form, which is sort of unusual in a three-movement sonata. Usually a rondo is something that happens in the third movement and is sort of happy and light. This is not a happy and light piece.
So it's backwards.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So speaking of a rondo, as you say, it's a traditional form, and very traditionally associated with like violin concertos, right? Or any instrument. It's usually the last movement, and as you say, it's a theme and variations where the theme keeps coming back, basically, right?
Yes.
So you said as well that you had been wanting to write a violin sonata for a while, and now you've told us about all of the inspiration specifically related to your thematic material and your narrative. But how about why did you want to do a violin sonata, and like, did you have any models from the violin literature that inspired you to do that?
Well, I have loved the violin since I was a little child. I found a violin in my attic, my mother's old violin from her childhood. She had taken lessons. I ended up not taking violin lessons, but I always loved the instrument. And I became acquainted with quite a bit of chamber music for violin and piano as a collaborative pianist. I have, played Brahms and the Rebecca Clark viola sonata, which is so beautiful. And once I started composing, I just loved composing for violin. So I really love the melodic and harmonic colors of composers like Ravel and Debussy, Brahms, of course, but also the motivic complexity and the harmonic and melodic folk elements in Bartók, for example, are very inspirational to me. I also love the Bernstein Serenade for violin. It's just a very moving piece. And I had just discovered that recently, this summer. So I was listening to all of this music before I started composing the sonata. You know, I didn't model it after any specific piece, especially because I already had decided to use these melodies. And I also use improvisation as a sort of kickstart to my composing often. So each piece sort of developed, but listening to these different pieces inspires me to write more music for strings, just to develop new ideas.
That's so interesting that you say Ravel and you know, the great violin sonatas. I certainly thought of Ravel as I was, you know, working on this piece with you a lot, and the Impressionists, but also a great deal of Americana and Leonard Bernstein. I can hear that. That makes that makes sense to me completely. So okay, so we're going to say that if you're curious out there what Dawn's piece is going to sound like, some marriage of Impressionism with Leonard Bernstein, but in her uniquely own voice, right? Not just that. All right. And you already mentioned as well that you were interested in you know, multicultural thematic sources. This is something that's present in this piece, but that's not really a new thing for you, right? This is something that you've done before. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, my first opera, which is currently a finalist for the American Prize in Opera Composition, which is entitled Verlorene Heimat, which means lost homeland. And it's the true story of ethnic German East Prussians and the Ukrainian Jewish girl whom they sheltered during World War II. They were refugees. And for that opera, I incorporated a Jewish folk song, the title of which is Amol is Givna Maisa. It's a Yiddish song that has become a symbol of the Holocaust. It is a symbol of all the losses the Jews have experienced over the centuries. And I interwove that song, the melody, with a very beloved East Prussian hymn that was sung. The story is actually about my relatives, and so they used to sing this song actually in their home after they had fled East Prussia. And in addition to an old German hymn about being refugees that I had found, and those three melodies served as the motivic basis actually for the whole opera, combined with sort of wave-like motifs that were inspired by the Baltic Sea, which is near where this story took place and where I actually started composing this opera when I was at a residency in Sweden, right on the Baltic. So
right, that East Prussia is modern day Poland. Is that correct? Would I be right about that? Or is it modern day Germany that you're talking about here?
Yes, it's now modern day Poland, and also southwestern Russia. Parts of it are actually still Russia. Right. So composing that was, I was controversial as well, because I was portraying ethnic Germans in a sympathetic light, but they began as supporters of Hitler because they thought that he was going to bring them economic prosperity and make East Prussia great again. And then when they realized what was actually happening, they began to resist quietly, and they actually risked their lives to do so. So that was my first opera. And then I have started an opera, scenes of which have been performed by the Cleveland Opera Theater, but I'm still working on this opera, about a mining community, gold mining community in remote eastern Alaska. And I am working on incorporating native Han language and culture into that opera. It's based on historical characters and locations. I'd been to this place 3 times, and as part of the Composing in the Wilderness program. And in the history that I read about it, there was very little mention of the Han natives who lived there, but I ended up researching and finding someone who's from there, and her father actually happened to be the first superintendent of the national parks of that area. So that is another project that is incorporating some multicultural elements. And
Wow. Wow, that's really fascinating. And I already noticed that you speak amazing German, and that is not just because your name is Sonntag, right? You're born in Minnesota, right? So this is a nice segue for me to just ask you a little bit about where your career has taken you. You already said something about your family has connections to East Prussia, that you were composing in Sweden. Tell us about all that. I'd love to hear. I'd love everyone in Second City family to hear about it. It's amazing.
Well, I was born in Northwest Wisconsin, and then spent the first really 5 years of my life in Southwest rural Minnesota. And then my parents, who were both teachers, relocated to Milwaukee. And I had my first memories of music really are climbing up on the piano that my parents had just got. It was the day they got it delivered. I climbed up on the bench. I was 3. And I just remember seeing the pattern of black and white keys and playing, like, I can play my own songs on this thing. It was just so delightful. My parents were both very avid amateur musicians. They were church organists, and they read music, but I didn't have private lessons as a child. My mom showed me where middle C was on the keyboard and music, and then I taught myself. And when I was in high school, I started entering some competitions, and I had also studied trumpet. I played trumpet for 10 years as a child and youth, and so I became acquainted with some really great wind ensemble music. I played with the Milwaukee Symphony Youth Orchestra, and then I went off to college and decided that I was going to become a musician. And I pretty quickly in my undergrad career, I changed from trumpet to voice. I loved to sing, and I loved foreign languages. So I began studying voice and was lucky to have wonderful teachers. One of them was Yolanda Marculescu, who was a close friend of Ellie Ameling. And I ended up then finishing my undergrad at UT El Paso, and then moved with my then husband to Germany. And I had married young. I had 2 children, and within a year I was living there as a single parent. So I made a career in Germany as a collaborative pianist and singing. I studied there and studied piano and voice. And then I ended up marrying a German and returning to the US. And at that time, I said, it is time for me to start composing. Came back to the States. I tentatively started writing some things, and then it just started rolling along. And I chose to go to the University of Minnesota for my doctorate because I could study composition there, even though I had no undergrad degree in composition. And I'll always be indebted to my composition professor there, Alex Lubit, who was so supportive. And that's just led to where I am now. And I feel like I have taken the scenic route and ended up on the right path with some really great perspectives because of the route that I took. And I think still with a long journey in front of me, I have lots of ideas. So
what other projects do you have in the hopper as a composer, and when and where might we expect to hear them?
Well, my latest opera, which is entitled For Life, will be premiered online at the end of August or in early September by the actually by Baldwin Wallace College Conservatory students and their string orchestra. This is part of the Cleveland Opera's New Opera Festival, which this year they have combined with a company called Operas in Place in New York City. And it's going to be a festival of micro operas that were commissioned specifically for this festival. And this particular opera is about mental health issues, actually. And the librettist is Kermit Cole, who is the co-editor and co-founder of the organization Mad in America, which is an advocacy organization for mental health issues. So that's coming up. And then I recently had a premiere of a art song cycle for harpsichord, cello, and voice on the climate change poetry by a poet named Carlos Santos Perez, who is an English professor at the University of Hawaii. And that was commissioned by the Burning River Baroque duo, Melina Rauschenfels and Paula Most, who she is now an assistant professor at the Peabody Conservatory, and Melina is based in Cleveland. So they are actually releasing their first recording soon, and that cycle will be on the recording. And Kermit and I have some future projects planned as well, and I've got a long list of string music and keyboard music that I will probably never have enough time to finish everything I'd like to do.
I'm so delighted to be one of the first to welcome you to the Puget Sound, Dawn. It's so great to have you as part of our community, and I'd like to thank you for speaking with us today. For those of you who are more interested in learning more about Dawn's fascinating career, you can visit her website at dawnsonntag.com, Dawn with a W, of course. And of course, join me and pianist Lisa Bergman on Thursday, July 22nd at Lakewold Gardens at 7:30 p.m. to hear the premiere of Dawn's new work, as well as suites by Igor Stravinsky, Erich Wolfgang Kongold, and William Grant Still. We'll see you there, and you can get tickets at the door or by going to our website, www.scchamberseries.org. See you soon, everybody. Bye-bye.